Hello all, welcome to another lab. Welcome to my channel. If you haven't subscribed, please like and subscribe. Please share it with your friends. And this will help us to keep the materials coming so that will be useful for you and for your friends and anyone else who are out there and like to learn technology. So today we're going to do a basic setup, and the basic setup is pretty much it's a basic router setup, right? So you go out, you purchase a new router, you come back home with it. There's really no keyboard or mouse, and you need to configure that router so that it can function on the network and you can get to it remotely. So what we're going to do, we're going to give the router a name, right, from the default name. All routers are called router default. All switches are called switches by default. We're going to configure a username and a password, and we're going to configure SSH for remote management. So let's get right into it. So here we go. So we get on the router over here, and I will go to the CLI. So notice this is packet tracer, so you could double click on the device and you could click in CLI at the tab. You see the tab physical config, CLI or attributes, right? We're going to focus on CLI, so I could get in there and I could start configuring it from here. But if it were a physical device, I would not have anywhere that I could touch a button that gets me to the CLI, right? So at the bottom here where I'm pointing, I would go and select an end device. I'd more or less have a laptop, and with this laptop, I'd run into the data center where that router is, or if I have it under my desk, I would connect to a console cable, get a console cable, and I plug in the console port of the router, and I'd plug in the serial port of the laptop, right? And from the laptop, I would use a terminal emulation program, which is on my desktop. In this case, is terminal, right? And we just hit OK. And notice I am in the router right now to manage it, right? So if you notice, the router is called router by default. So one of the first things that we have to do is, as you see here, we're in the user exec mode. To get into config privilege exec mode, we have to type enable, right? And we type config T, which is configure terminal, and it gets us into global config mode. From the global config mode, we type host name, and we change it to R1 as it's depicted here, right? All routers by default is called router. All switches by default is called switch. So we have to change the name from the default to be able to set up SSH. So that's one of the first requirements. So we did that, right? Again, I'm going to do WR here, or I could do copy run in config to startup config. Gets you the same result, right? So I'm here with that. And what's the next thing we're going to do? The next thing that we're going to do here, to be able to configure a router or a switch with SSH, one thing that you have to do, you have to, so let me give you a list here. You have to change the default name, right? You have to um, assign a domain, configure a domain, right? So that's configure a domain name. You have to now, what else do you have to do? Of course, you have to have login information, which is, create a username. You have to do the configure crypto, CRY, PTO, and you configure SSH. All right, so these are the things that you have to do, right? So we did change the domain name already. So the other things that we're going to do here now is say IP domain, right, and name. And in this case, I'm just going to say the domain name that I want it to be is ncdit.com, right? And I hit enter. And once I do that, that's a domain name that's assigned. And we're going to create a username. The username that we're going to use is admin, and the password. So again, let me just write it here. The username that we're using is admin, and the password is Cisco, right? Just for ease. So let's go over here, and how we do that is type username, admin, password is Cisco, and we hit enter. So we just created the username admin, password Cisco. we're also going to need to create an enabled username. So the enabled password, pardon me. So the enabled password is going to be class. It's also case sensitive, right? So again, enable password is class. All right, so we just did that. Now, if we look, do show run, and what it will do, again, you realize that it's showing us our username, our enable password, it's in clear text, and also our username and password are in clear text. And that is because the service, we have no service password encryption. That's the default. One of the things I could do here is just highlight and copy, do Control C, then I paste it in and hit enter. If I go back and do show run, notice it's the enable password is still there, but it's in an encrypted format. And if I go further down, see the username is still there, but it's in an encrypted format. Okay, so again, we have changed the name, we've created the username, we've created the enable password, and we're good. And we also assigned the domain name. So if we want to look at the domain name, we can just go do show run. And if I go all the way down, I'll see my domain name that I created, and here we are. We're good. So the next thing that we could do here, we could say crypto key generate, right? And we're going to use RSA, and we'll just hit enter here, and it says, hey, how many bits encryption? I'm going to say 2048, it's stronger, and hit enter, and we're good. So now we have crypto key gen is there, and here we can now say IP SSH, sorry, SSH, IP SSH version 2, right? So that's what we just did, and I'll save the config. All right, so now it's configured for at least we have configured the encryption mechanism on it. So now we're going to enable SSH. So how are we going to connect to a router? We're going to connect to a router by way of an IP address, right? Notice if I assign an IP address here, I could say interface gigabit 0/0 where it's connected. I put an IP address in 192.168.1.1, 255.255.255.0, and I say no shut. The interface is now online. That's all I did. Now I could go over to my PC, and on my PC here, I click, keep it on the top. I click top. I click desktop, and I'm going to assign 192.168.1.10, 255.255.255.0. Default gateway is 192.168.1.1, which is the IP address that's on my router. Right from here, I could go to the CLI or the command line interface of the PC. And how I do it, I type ipconfig, and I see the IP address of my PC. I see the subnet mask of my PC, and also the IP address of the default gateway. The IP address of the default gateway, by the way, if we look at the topology, we will see that this is the IP address of the router. So if I go ping 192.168.1.1, I can ping it, no problem. So I know that I'm communicating my IP over to my router. But if I go here and I say SSH, right, and I could do, let me just type SSH and hit enter. It's saying, hey, this is the command that you have to use. So I say SSH -L, which is where I provide my username. So in this case, it's admin. And the IP address that I'm trying to get to is 192.168.1.1. And I hit enter, and it's saying, hey, what's your password? So your password is Cisco. Okay, so I don't know where the remnants are coming from, because I was kind of surprised that I'm getting to it, by the way, because I know that I did not set up any configs here. So let's go ahead and take a look why it's actually giving me a prompt, right? So let's do this. Ooh, here, guys. I did not turn off IP domain, no IP domain lookup, so that's why it's actually trying to do a translation right now. It's trying to translate the fat finger that I just did. Normally, I should be able to do Control-Shift-6, and it should break it. For some reason, it's not breaking out when I'm in when I'm in the recorder here. So let me just pause, clear it out, and come back. All right, so the magic of video, it went away. So again, as you see here, it's trying to translate, right? So we can stop that from happening, right? One of the things that we could do, we go back into config T, right? And in config T, what I will do is I will do no IP domain lookup, right? So even if I were to fat finger again, right? Let's say Z hit enter or Z hit enter, right? It's not going to do the translation. It's just going to go away right away. Let me save that. I save that config there. So let's look and see what happened here, right? Line VTY 0 to 4, login is enabled. That's why it was allowing me to log in, right? So let me just fix that. I could go config T line VTY 0 to 4, and I could say login. So look, by the way, when I do login, right? Notice I could do login and hit enter, or I could say login local. Login local, what it does allow me to do, it tells the router, hey, when anyone is trying to connect to me by way of SSH, right, check the local database for username and password. If the username and password matches the username and password that I created up here, then allow them to get in. If it doesn't match the username and password, do not allow them to get in. That's what login local means, right? So I hit enter, right? And now I could say, transport input. So transport input specifies the protocol that it will allow. By default, it's going to be all, or you could say none. That means you're not allowing SSH or Telnet or anything. Or I could just put that I'm allowing SSH alone, or I'm allowing Telnet, right? In this case, I'm saying I need to allow SSH alone. So once I do that, right, I have that configured in there. Now I could go back and show run and look at the configs. So if I go back and look at the configs here, notice my line VTY 0 to 4, log on local, transport input SSH, right? So if I go back to my PC over here and I hit enter, it says, okay, what's my password, Cisco? Now it took it. Notice that it took Cisco and I can get in. That's because on my config over here, I'm saying check the local database for the username and password that's being supplied. If it matches, then let it in, right? I could further demonstrate that to you, right? I could exit out of here and I could say SSH, right? Let's say my name is Norwin Phillips, right? So I say N Phillips, right? And if I do hit enter and I said, what's my password? My password is Cisco, not working. Cisco, not working. The reason that's not working, if you look up here on my router, right, show run, I do not have a username there called Norwin Phillips or N Phillips. So to get that to work, what I'd have to do is go username N Phillips, password Cisco. And the moment I do that and I go back over here and supply that credential, Cisco, boom, it lets me in. And then I say enable, and what's my enable password? It's class, and it lets me right in. So now look at where I am, guys. Let me get my pencil. I love my pencil, right? So I'm over here. I'm going to change the color. I like red. So over here, right, I am connecting from PC 0, and I am connected to router 1, but I'm connected over IP. So I'm traversing the switch to the PC, and I'm connected to the PC here to manage it, right? So let me clear that out, right? And let me get rid of my pencil, and I'm going to go back over here. So I could actually get rid of this, which is my laptop. So I no longer need the laptop. So I'm going to disconnect the laptop. I'm going to run back up to my office. Now my office is up on the second floor. I could manage the router remotely. So again, I go on my PC. I could go to the CLI, which is a command line interface of my PC, and I'm on the router, right? I could manage the router. I could do anything I want to do with the router remotely, right? I could save, just do anything that I want to do there, right? So if I go, again, show run, right? I am looking at my username. I have a user created admin. I have a user created and Phillips. And a matter of fact, I could show users. This is a command that you need to know, right? Show users, and I hit enter. It says, hey, by the way, there's a user connected to me, right, remotely, and Philips, right? This is it. So user, I could also, and it's connected VTY, right? Let me get another PC on the canvas. What if I grab another PC and I put that PC here? I get plug something into the fast Ethernet, plug it on the switch over there, fast forward, so I don't have to sit here and wait. Let me give this PC now an IP address, which is 192.168.1.11, 255.255.255.0, 192.168.1.1, right? So if I were to go to command prompt here again, I could type ipconfig, and I see my, oh Lord, let's go here. I could see my IP address is configured. I could ping myself, which is 192.168.1.11. I could ping my default gateway 1.1, and I could ping the other PC 0. I could ping it, and that's 10. Okay, right? No worries. So now let me try to also SSH to SSH minus L, type in admin, and it's 192.168.1.1 to the router, and it's Cisco, and then I go in and do class. So now I'm connected to the router by way of PC 0 and PC 1. If I do show users, it says, hey, there are 2 users that are connected to me. And Philips and admin. And Philips is using, VTY 0, and admin is using VTY 1. So now that leads us to a very important information that I want to share with you here. So when you're doing this line VTY 0 to 4, you're pretty much saying that you can have 5 concurrent connection by way of SSH, right? So you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so that's 5, right? So that's why when we look at this here in the config, if we go up here and take a look at it, when we look at the show users, you see the first one connected was VTY 0, second one is 1, third one is 2, 3, 4, and subsequently until we get to all of them, okay? All right. So yeah, so again, we are able to connect from either of the PCs over to the router. Notice we didn't do anything with the switch yet, but we could also connect our switch so that it can be remotely managed. Again, the operating system is very similar, so we could do the same thing. I click top so it stays on top, so even if I click over here, it doesn't go behind, right? I go to the CLI and I hit enter, and notice my switch name by default is switch. And I do enable, I do config T here, and I change this. I could say host name is equal to CCNA dash switch 1. That's fine. That's the name that I use. I had to change the default name, configure a domain name. So I said, IP domain, right, name is equal to ncdit sol.com. Right, I know I used the other name before, right? But that's fine. And now what I need to do, I need to create a username. Username is admin, password is Cisco. Hit enter. I do enable, password is class, right? And I do service, password, encryption, service password, encryption. All right, and then I just did that. Then what else do we need to do? I can now do line VTY 0 to 4, login, local, right? And I would say transport input. I could say all, right? That's fine. So now that means I'm allowing SSH, I'm allowing AUX, and I'm also allowing telnet, right? If I wanted to do that. So now the switch, look, if you're going to connect to the switch, show IP interface brief. If you're going to connect to the switch, by default, the switch is a layer 2 device. It does not have an IP connect configured to it. So what we have to do, we have to use what's called an SVI, right? So the SVI is the SVI, which is the switch virtual interface. We have to configure it with an IP address that will allow us to connect to it remotely for management. All right, so let's clear that off and let's get it done. So in this case, the only VLAN that's on the switch is VLAN 1. And notice the interface is down, down. So we're going to interface VLAN 1. And I'm going to decide to use, my router is using .1. So if you look here, my router is using 192.168.1.1. I'm going to use 192.168.1.2 for my switch. So I say IP address 192.168.1.2, 255.255.255.0, and I will say no shut. And once I say no shut, notice my VLAN 1 interface came up. If we go back and do show IP interface brief, right, I could now look at it and see that it's up, up. So being that it's up, up, I could now go to my PC, any one of my PCs, PC1, PC2, or even the router, and I could do here. Actually, I'm on the router right now because I'm connected to it over SSH. I could say ping 192.168.1.2, which is my switch. The first one is going to be dropped by ARP, and then the second one, it's going to start pinging, right? Look at that. Boom, it's pinging, no issues whatsoever. And let me get back over here and let me go back to my command line over here. And again, I'll just say exit. Let me disconnect from my router. Right? So what we could do here, I could now say telnet, because remember, I am allowing telnet on the switch. I could say telnet 192.168.1.2 and hit enter, and it says give me a username, it's admin, and the password is Cisco, and I'm into the switch, and I enable, and I set the password is class, and it lets me right in, right? I could also exit out of my switch. I could say SSH. Somebody's trying to get in touch with me here. I'm turning that off. I could say SSH minus L, and I'm going to be typing in admin. And what I'm trying to connect to is 192.168.1.2, which is my switch. And it's saying, hey, what's going on here? Oh, I missed something, right? You guys are probably saying, no, Norwin, that will not work. You missed something. And I did not hear you because, of course, I'm out here in YouTube land. So what are the things that we need to configure? We need to change the default name. We need to configure the domain. We need to create the user, but we need to configure SSH, which we did, right? What we did really, we configured line VTY and specify that we're allowing SSH, but we didn't configure crypto. So I need to get back in global config and I need to type crypto key generate RSA, and I'm going to say 1024 this time, right? I could have also used 10, by the way, guys, I could have also used 2048, but I just decided to use it because, right? And I'm going to say IP SSH version 2, right? And I did that. And now that I did that, I could go back over here and I could go back and try connecting with SSH and boom, it connected. And it's asking me for my username at Cisco, enable, my password is class, and here I am. So now I can connect to both my switch and my routers using SSH. In my switch, I could use Telnet, right? So again, I could do show users, right? I see that I'm connected with admin, and here we go, right? So we have done a lot, and the time went by so fast, it's almost 25 minutes for this video, right? So we've configured, we've changed the default name for both the switch and the router. We've configured username and password. We've also configured enable password for both the switch and the routers, and we've configured SSH for remote management. And in the case of our switch, we have also configured Telnet for remote management, right? I hope you actually found this to be very informative, right? And it really helps you on your journey to becoming a network engineer, right? And the only way that you're going to get good at this, guys, is by practicing, right? Please leave your comments. Please subscribe and like. I will continue to put videos out there for those of you who are my students, right? And you're watching here. If you have any questions, always feel free to get in touch with me. and I will try to answer them for you for those who are not my students in my, on campus class or virtual classes. I encourage you to just leave comments and I'll interact with you and provide you with as much information as you need, right? I love to teach, I love to share my knowledge. I try to find the best way to explain the things to my students. So I hope that it resonates with you. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to hearing from you. Bye now.